Now we are heading to our next session, that is ethical aspect of medical devices by Dr. Shiv Joshi sir. Dr. Shiv Joshi sir completed his MBBS and postgraduate diploma in geriatric medicine. Further, he is internationally certified in the principles of bioethics and human rights by the UNESCO Department of Education and has certification in human rights. Currently, he is a final year MD student in community medicine at Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, Sevagram. He is also serving in the capacities of National President for the Students Program of India, which is a part of the international network of UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, and as the National Convener for the Indian Medical Association Junior Doctors Network. He is an active to the working group on primary health care for the Junior Doctors Network and member of the Medical Ethics Working Group. Please,
Thank you,
sir.
Chinmay. Thank you, Chinmay, for that introduction. You could have cut it off a bit. All right, all right. So I think we can start.
Yes, sir.
Mhm. All right. So hello everyone, and today we are going to discuss on this, an interesting topic. When we are talking about ethics, it is always about that gray area where you cannot be very confident or whether things are going right or wrong, and you always want to have more and more discussions, deliberations, and only then and then you are able to take decisions when it comes to ethical issues. And today what we are going to do is we are going to have an overview, and I'm going to keep technical details out of the presentation, and I'll try to take you to the journey based on some case scenarios. And though of course, if we are talking about ethics and medical devices, we need to go through certain regulations, the legal provisions that are there in the country. But then what I've tried to do for this session for all of you is that instead of going into in-depth details of each of those, we'll be just summarizing the key points that you need to know related to these regulations that exist in our country. And I would share the detailed laws and regulations with the organizers who can then forward it to you. Starting with the very first image on this cover slide, if you look at the cartoon here, it says, um, of course, if you want it removed after the study is over, it will cost you $1,000. All right. So this is actually an excellent example where we are trying to say that after the research is over, how do you cover the costs, or how do you compensate the patient? So he's no longer a part of your trial. You fitted some device on the patient, and now the study is over. So how do you take care of that? So we are going to discuss all these interesting case scenarios here. So let's delve into the case. And I would like you to comment on the case in the chat box so that we can convert this into an interactive session. So we will try to do that. I'm reading out the case one for you. A doctor performs an orthopedic implant. The implant manufacturer asks the doctor to fill out a questionnaire 6 months later in order to monitor how the patient is doing. The manufacturer says it wants to learn about the implant performance and patient mobility. In return, the doctor will get a check in the mail for rupees 75,000. Amount of time necessary to fill out the questionnaire is 15 minutes. Given this case scenario, what do you think about it? I mean, what are your comments? What do you think? What is going on here? Anyone? All right. So meanwhile, people think on the case. I'll give you some hints. Okay. So here are some hints. So a doctor is performing an orthopedic implant. He's asked to fill out a questionnaire 6 months later, and he's told that it is to monitor how the patient is doing. All right. and that the manufacturer wants to learn about the implant performance and patient mobility. Now, the doctor is also getting a compensation in form of a check of rupees 75,000, and the amount of time necessary to fill this questionnaire is 15 minutes. What do you think about this scenario? What is going on here? Any comments? Any comments from the audience?
Sir, there's one comment from Vishal that we
Mhm.
should ask the patient for consent.
All right. Yeah, that's a wonderful observation that it is very important if you are going to collect patient data and you are going to give it to the manufacturer for any purposes, not just the manufacturer, but anyone else, any third party, if they are going to use this data, even the doctor himself who is attending the patient, if they are going to use this, use this data, then they need the consent from the patient. That is an excellent observation. What else do you think about this case? All right, so some points that concern me when I look at it from the lens of ethics. So, doctor is performing an orthopedic implant, that's fine, he's just doing his job. But the manufacturer approaching them to fill out a questionnaire 6 months later, this raises a question in my mind that is this a part of the phase 4? So, am I actually talking about the post rollout market surveillance? Or am I wanting to collect some real-time data on how my device has been performing? Now, if I'm doing the first case scenario, then that might be something good. So even after the implants are rolled out, the companies want to collect data on that, and they want to improvise on that design, and they want to, improvise if there are any flaws detected while the use of their implants. But if it is the second scenario, then it makes me wonder that why in the first place such an implant was rolled out in the market for which you still need more information regarding the performance and patient mobility. So, are we trying to get our products out in the market to use of certain forces to get our approvals done, not by the methods that are intended, but by the methods that are more desirable by the manufacturers? And why the doctor should receive a check-in mail for rupees 75,000 for such such an arrangement? So it makes me feel, it makes me feel that there's some sort of deal going on between the manufacturer and the doctor, of which patient is not a part, but everything that is being happening is happening to the patient. So that implant is being put in the patient, the details are shared of the patient by the doctor to the manufacturer. So everywhere, patient is the source of information as well as the experimental subject, but he or she is not receiving anything by being a part of this particular. This can be called a part of a market-based, survey, research, and development. So, and again, the company claims that this is just to monitor how the patient is doing and they just wanted to know about the implant performance. But then on the contradictory, it also says that the amount of time necessary to fill out this questionnaire would be 15 minutes. So we are still looking at a very, very, very elaborate questionnaire, which is trying to capture a lot of aspects of the implant that is being put inside. So can this actually be justified? So these are some real case scenarios that I'm discussing with you. Moving on to case 2. This is a different case. Now here a doctor gets paid more than rupees 75 lakh annually to supervise other physicians on how to perform minimally invasive hip surgery. Now the surgery he proctors happens to only use one company's implants. What are your comments on this? What do you think is going on here? Any comments? All right. So again, I'll just I understand that when we are trying to identify the ethical issues, most of us we become very uncomfortable. And even if we have certain views when it comes to ethical issues, it becomes very difficult to get it across by what we mean. We often feel that, are we going to offend some people, or are we going to say something that others won't like, not just in the sense of what you're saying, but also in the sense of what subtly you're trying to imply. So that might be the case. But again, I'll go ahead and give you certain pointers. So here again, a doctor is paid a certain amount, and the real problem is that only one company's implants are being used. So of course there is something really wrong here. Again, this is an excellent example where you are looking at lobbying, where and it's very important to understand that doctor is also a victim here in this case. So we are not looking at a doctor who is, doctor is also falling into the trap of such companies. And not just because we are talking about medical devices, I'm restricting myself to the companies that are designing medical devices, but this also holds true for a lot of pharmaceutical companies. So we need to understand who exactly is driving the wrong here. So again, this is an excellent case where you are saying that, again, the patient gets performed with a minimally invasive hip surgery. All the doctor has to do is to supervise. But you know why I put that supervise in the bracket? Yeah, of course, there's one reason is that doctor is almost same as supervise. But then the idea is that that supervise that you are calling here, the doctor is actually encouraging or promoting the use of certain companies' implants. And money can be one of the driving factors, but there would be a lot of other factors why such deal usually works for a longer duration. We'll discuss that. Coming to the case 3, an orthopedics medical practice wants to expand in order to conduct research, and it wants to hire a fellow. So it establishes a not-for-profit foundation to fund a fellowship. One of the medical device companies sponsors the fellowship, and the fellow carries the company's title. What do you think is the wrong here? I'll put the pointers for you to think on. Any comments? All right. So again, when we are talking about, so this is again a scenario where you are looking at how the people who are manufacturing this medical devices do a sort of laundering. Okay. So what is happening is that a certain person wants to establish his practice, his or her practice, and they want to expand. Okay. And they want to further undertake research. And for the purposes of research, they want to hire a fellow. But now the way they are doing it, so they could have just rolled out an advertisement, they could have hired a fellow, and they could have conducted research. But instead, what they choose to do is they establish a not-for-profit foundation, and through that foundation, the medical device companies actually sponsor the fellowship. All right. So what ultimately we are trying to do here is that the company is sponsoring the fellowship, which could have been seen as wrong when it comes to ethical. If you look at it through an ethical lens, it will turn out to be as a wrong practice. But because you have set up this, some middleman here, so you are having a not-for-profit foundation to fund this fellowship. So now indirectly, still the medical device company is sponsoring the fellowship, encouraging the research, but at the same time, it is also encouraging and promoting their name. It is also advertising the name. So in a way, it is like, so it can be something like company A's, fellowship in research methodology, or maybe it can be some particular, project which is dealing with vaccine development. Again, we need to understand what exactly is a medical device. We'll come to that in a few more slides. But then it is also important that in India, all the medical devices as well as pharmaceuticals, the compositions, the chemical compositions, everything is referred to as drugs. All right. And most of these things are regulated by common regulations and regulatory bodies. So there are a lot of implications when it comes to the ethical issues pertaining to both of these, and we'll try to understand them in a bit. So
Sir,
when,
there are few comments.
yeah,
Naman has comment advertisement. Sanskriti has comment. Again, the patient consent is not kept in mind and advertising is going on.
mhm.
Veerbrother has put the comment. Harsh has put the comment. It is a type of advertising which is not ethical.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. That's the point. So it's really good that you guys were able to catch that part, and that is what I wanted to emphasize on. That certain amount of times we might actually not be able to, catch upon all these things, and we might see that, oh, such a wonderful opportunity. Let's apply for a research fellowship, and what you really are actually promoting is uh, the very thing you don't want to promote. So you don't want medical device companies to be influencing the decision making in terms of academic media. So if you're talking about an academic forum, you don't want the people from medical device companies to influence that. You don't want the people from medical device companies to actually decide what company's x-ray machine the doctor should buy, what company's MRI is to be established at a government hospital. So all these areas, so this is a very subtle thing. So many of you might just think that this company is just sponsoring a fellowship. How does that make such a big impact? But it does. It actually makes a very big impact, because now the fellow carries the company's title attached to their fellowship, and wherever he or she is going to work, they are going to promote the company. And so subtly, not even you don't even have to announce all this, but just by the virtue of you being a part of this, you start promoting these wrong practices. So there is something very relevant to be understood in this case. So where usually the places of conflict occurs? So in my opinion, the places of conflict occurs at three broad places. One is research and development. So there are lots of ethical issues which happen during research and development. Second category of ethical issues, they arise while you are using the medical devices in your practice. And the third and the very core issue is philosophical in itself. So if you want to further understand, I would say that when you're talking about research and development, we are talking about ethical product development, which is a solution to it. uh, if you're talking about use in practice and how we can deal with the ethical issues, then the answers would be transparency, accountability, responsibility, right? And the basic philosophy where the debate happens when it comes to medical devices and the ethical issues. So it's possible that you have a very good ethical product development team and process in place. You also are very transparent, accountable, and responsible for whatever the results your medical devices are providing. Even if there is harm, you're providing adequate compensation. But many people have this contradiction with the philosophy of transhumanism in itself. So we'll try to look into each of these solutions and each of these debates in brief, so that we get an overview of what are the ethical issues and what are the ethical dilemmas that we are talking about when we deal with the medical devices in general. And we'll begin with the ethical product development. Now, in ethical product development, I want to bring your focus to this plus model, and it is a model which is already well accepted. So there's a plus model of ethical decision making when it comes to your product development. So as I understand that most of the sessions that were taken today dealt with ideation, innovation, and creation of different prototypes, and innovation in the field of healthcare. What we need to understand is that while we are developing these products, it is very important to have a design, a way of developing these products which is ethical. Okay, so how do you ensure that? So we are basically going to follow this model called the plus model, and the P in plus stands for policies and procedures. So the question that I need to ask is that, is the product in development in line with the policies laid out by the company where the product is developed? All right. So it is quite possible that within a company, you might have a set of researchers who have very contradicting views, okay, when it comes to developing medical devices. A person might feel that it is absolutely all right to use stem cells to create new organs, and to so that these organs can be used back by the host. So it is such a great technology, but people within the organization or within the company might not feel the same way, right? So if such a debate is there, it is very useful uh, if we try to compare whatever we are developing with the already laid out company policies. So company, when it was established, we would have certain policies and procedures established with the company, and we want them not to be altered. So it is just like a randomized control trial. So if you have published a protocol somewhere else, you don't want to deviate from that protocol, right? If you do so, there is something ethically wrong there, because you want to manipulate with something, right? This might help. So if you already have existing policies for your company, this can be individual policies. So if you are not affiliated to a company, you are working with an institution. So whether your product development is in line with the policies laid out by your institute. Okay, so it is applicable across different categories, but then you need to ask this question. The L in the plus stands for legal. So will this medical device development violate any legal parameters or regulations? So whatever I'm developing, is it going to violate the law of the land? Okay, that is the second basic question I need to answer if I am going to follow ethical product development. The U in this process is universal. So how does my product development deal or relate to the values and principles which are established universally for the device development to operate? So if I'm working in India, what do people in Europe, what do people in India, what do people in Bangladesh, what do people in China think about such a technology if it was developed, or if it was under development in all these other places? What was the receptiveness of such a technology? What was the acceptance of such a product, right? Is it in tune with the core values and the culture of people where I am residing, of the people for whom I'm making this medical device? All right, that would be my third major question. And the last one would be self. Last but not the least, I should say self is the most important component actually. But then, for the sake of understanding and remembering things, if we put it as a plus model for decision making, whether your development of a medical device is ethical, then self is the most important part. And you need to ask this question: that does it meet the developer's standard of fairness and justice? So now many of us might say that the developer might be, very ambitious, and they might want to develop something which is very good for their name and their fame, and for their company. But you also need to understand that self is a part of the decision making model. So you want the model or the device that you are making doesn't hurt your own conscience. So when you look into your own eyes and you talk about your product, do you feel ashamed of it? So I would say that if someone if I talk about a technology, okay, which was made for some other purpose, and now it has been exploited, okay, the classical example would be to create a recombinant DNA, but to use it as a source of bioterrorism. So a person who is creating such a medical device, so even that would be a medical device. So you need to understand that medical device doesn't just mean a physical device. It can be a biological device. Okay, it can be a medical device. So there, this concept of self matters a lot, and we need to understand that it needs to meet the standards of justice and fairness existing within the society, and something that the developer themselves or the researcher themselves are able to come into agreement with, right? Coming to the second part that I was talking about, the second conflict of interest usually comes when we are using these products, right? So when you're using these products, the answers to the ethical issues would be to maintain transparency, accountability, and responsibility. So how do you do that, right? So here again, I'm going to give you four actually quick points, and the fifth point as a trigger for all of us to think. The testing requirements need to be fulfilled adequately as well as comprehensively. So you cannot do away with the testing requirements. You cannot do away with the, okay, so right now we are suffering from COVID pandemic, right? So everyone is suffering from, everyone across the globe is suffering from the COVID pandemic, right? And we had and we have right now an acute shortage of lots of components related to personal protective equipment, right? So can this be actually an excuse to allow people to manufacture any quality masks without any, properly or adequately fulfilled testing requirements? Can that be allowed? Who is responsible for the loss that happens by the use of such a medical device, by use of such a technology? Who will be responsible if something goes wrong? Right, same thing has been taught. We usually land into a debate about vaccines, right? So vaccines are under development, and a lot of countries are in this race of developing the vaccines. But while we all are in this race, can this be justified to waive off the adequate testing requirements, right? What if our vaccine is waived off with certain phases of trials, and immediately you put it for trial in the humans, and it doesn't work out properly, right? Or it has negative effects, right? Then what would we do? And who will be the responsible person for this, right? Can we blame the pandemic for the sense of urgency, and that no, because it was a pandemic, so we had to, waive off certain testing requirements, and we cannot be held responsible for the problem or for the adverse events that has happened because of the vaccines administration? That is absolutely not possible, and we cannot do that, right? So the testing requirements need to be fulfilled adequately and comprehensively. Where you can fasten up this process is that at the place of regulations. So where the results are actually promising, there might be a proper review board established where you can actually ask the people to review your findings, and whether to now stop the trial and put it out in the market. These decisions can be taken by the institutional review boards, the ethics committees, and that is their domain, right? And it needs to be considered. We cannot just skip all that. We don't want. It was a discussion in one of the other sessions also, that we do not want we don't want a medical device which is generated at the cost of a mediocre evidence, right? So we don't want that. We need it definitely, but we don't want it at the cost of mediocre evidence, right? So testing requirements need to be fulfilled adequately and comprehensively. Fast, procedures can be speeded up. We can speeden up these procedures at the level of approvals, regulations, which are more of the paper-based things, and certain formalities that need to be cleared. If it takes 15 days, we should talk about clearing all those things within 3 days. So something like that. So you can save time there, but you cannot save time by actually having a faulty testing facility, or by having some makeshift testing procedures. So that cannot work. So specifically for N95 masks, right now we are seeing companies are selling their N95 masks on Amazon and other online markets, and I don't know, somehow they are also able to get some certifications. So they will have some certification on their product, and that tricks people into buying those products. But they might actually not worth nothing. They might be just a piece of cloth between your face and the virus. So are we actually going to accept that? That is a big question. Medical device development needs to be free from pressure or influence of any organization or individuals. All right. So, and this is specifically in terms of reporting of failures. So, what if we roll out a medical device in the market, and there are some side effects, right? There are some adverse events that are causing. So some company might have rolled out a machine for dialysis, but post dialysis it is causing lots of adverse events in the people who receive dialysis, right? So the big company decides that no, it doesn't matter. You please, do not report this to anyone, and we'll keep it a something between you and the company, and we will improvise it. Please, you stay assured, we are going to improvise this, and it won't happen later. But all this is doing is encouraging the use of devices just for the benefit or just for the profit sake. right? And we do not want to encourage that. That is very important. So if we are in such a position, if we are developing a medical device, we need to understand that there might be a lot of pressure. Recently we saw that the editors and the journals, the respected journals, reputed journals in healthcare, like New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, they confessed of being influenced and being under a tremendous pressure when it comes to pharmaceutical companies and publishing of their reports and trials. This is happening. This is reality. We cannot turn a blind eye to this. Same is true for the medical device development. We need to keep it free of from pressure, and this would require activism. This requires activism. We need to make sure as people of this country, and we need to make sure as healthcare professionals, that the medical devices that we are using, are these medical device having sufficient evidence to support their use? Is it good for the patient? Again, from what I mean good is, so how do you say safe? So how much safe is really safe? Okay, so all of our trials are based on certain certain data, and none of the studies are going to be 100% effective, or is going to see, none of the medical devices going to work 100% of the times, right? So it would be based on some percent of efficiency, and we also need to understand the efficacy and effectiveness. So the medical device is being tested in a very ideal situation, in a very ideal environment. So it's just like mileage of your car, right? So they will sell the car to you by saying that this is going to give you mileage of around 24 kilometers per liter, but when you actually start running the car, you get hardly 18 or 19 kilometers per liter. So it's something like this. When you are doing a medical device development, can you actually do away with all those ideal scenarios? But this medical device is not going to be used in an ideal scenario. It is going to be used for normal people in a normal hospital setting, even in some extraordinary hospital settings or low resource settings. Then how it would perform there? So would it still be that effective? We do not know, because trials are not conducted like that, and there's a lot of pressure to roll out this interventions, to roll out this medical device into the market. So that becomes a very important place where you need to keep yourselves accountable to the people for whom you are making these devices. At the same time, people need to have this activism to keep the developers of medical devices accountable to them, right? The next important part is the post-market rollout surveillance of the medical devices. When you talk about medical devices, these will be rolled out after your phase 3 trials. So after you have done your human trials, after the animal testing was done, you did your human trials, and now finally, after ensuring the safety of a medical device, you are rolling it out in the market. All right. Now there is something called as phase 4 trials. Okay. Now this is something we do after your product is launched in the market. Okay. So after your product is launched in the market, you still want to do surveillance for adverse effects. Okay. So whether your device is causing some harm to people. So let's say a company was testing and manufacturing a low cost pacemaker, right? A pacemaker is going to be fit to a person's heart, and it is going to be there for quite some significant amount of time of a person's lifetime, right? So after it is rolled out, can the developer just say that now that the study is over, and now that this is a safe device, can you as a developer of that device uh, you know do away with the responsibility of taking care of those people who are fitted with your technology, or who are having the medical devices embedded in their systems? Now many a times this might be something like a glucose monitor. Okay, so it is a medical device. You might have for glucose monitoring, you might have a monitor, right? And when you look at this monitor, it is quite possible that uh, the calibration of the device might not hold true for your settings. So it is possible that the device was actually tested and calibrated for people living in US, and everything, all the approvals were taken from US, but then the technology that is approved in US can be brought back to our country, and if it is FDA licensed, we can cut across a lot of formal regulatory bodies in our own country, and we can introduce it in India. But now the people of India are using that to monitor their glucose, and it might not work the same way that was intended, right? And so this can be certain problems, right? So it is very important to do a post-market rollout surveillance, and you need to understand that while you do this surveillance, the point number two becomes very important. So while you're doing such a surveillance, your reporting needs to be free from any pressure or influence from the other organizers or your own sponsors, right? It might be your own bias. So it is very important to create some third party or some members from the civil societies to be there within your development process, development related decision making, so that you do not deviate, or you do not unintentionally, you might actually land up into some unethical practices which you don't want to do, right? The last point that I wanted to convey when you talk about responsibility is that you need to be responsible as a researcher, as a developer, for the harm that has been caused to the participant of the study while development process, or the user, the end user, or the customer who has taken the medical device that you have designed. When you talk about such a compensation, we need to understand that many a times the harm that is happening is totally unintentional. Okay, so during your trials you would have ensured for a lot of things to go correctly, and it went correctly, your results are outstanding, there's no doubt in that your device works. But still there is some harm that is happening, and now this harm might be unintentional. You are not intentionally causing that harm, nor your device was actually designed in a way or expected to cause that harm, but it did cause some harm. So you cannot just do away with the responsibility to compensate for that harm, right? So there's a very excellent example for this, and the company was Pfizer. Okay, so Pfizer rolled out a drug for the sake of not naming everything here, so just for the purposes of that confidentiality of things, what I'll try to say is you can go and Google the things, but then Pfizer was one such pharmaceutical company which was actually sued, and which was one of the companies which paid the uh, largest amount of compensation in the history of the world as we know today, which was close to $2.3 billion as compensation, right? So after their molecule was released in the market, there were lots of side effects. So everything in the trials seemed to be very okay, very great. Everything was green in the trials, but when it was rolled out in the market, there were lots of adverse events. People died. Okay, so there is this responsibility to compensate. So even if they would have said that this harm was unintentional, you just cannot say that and do away with the responsibility, because it is your device ultimately that has caused all these things. So what I want to mention, or what I want to embed in your minds right now, is that uh, though development procedure might be very exciting, very the need of the hour, we cannot actually do away with the basic minimum requirements for the technology to roll out, to make sure that after it is being rolled out, it is monitored adequately. It is also very important that we have responsibility to compensate for the harm, even if it is unintentional. Okay, discussing on the long-term responsibilities of the developers, right? So this is something I would like you to comment upon. If in your in the chat you can comment upon what are the long-term responsibilities of the developers. So let's think it of in both the ways. So with you as developer and with you as customer. So if I say that you are the developer of some medical device X, so what do you think are your long-term responsibilities related to that particular medical device? Anyone? Anyone wants to comment on that? Chinmay, please do point out if people are showing writing comments, because for some reason I cannot see the comments. All right.
Yes, sir. So there's one comment: after sale services.
Which
Uh,
services?
after sale,
After
after
sales
sales.
services. Yes, of
Yes.
course. Of course. That is actually one way how companies can actually monitor and do post-market rollout surveillance also of the respective medical devices. Also, there can be a system of annual servicing, right? So this is again a part of after sales, after sales services that you as a developer can provide. That is an excellent strategy. Great, great. Anything else?
Sir, there's another comment regarding the durability, reliability.
Mm-hmm.
As a customer, I would want to know all the back issues that may occur.
All the
Back issues after using or post using the
Yeah, of course, of course. You would like to know what sort of problems are arising because of your medical. See, many a times, that is what I was trying to say. When you think about efficacy and effectiveness, that is where the real, real meat of your process is, right? So if you think there is something really important, it is this: how efficacious your device is versus how effective it would be in the real scenarios, right? So you cannot ever predict that. You need to do a post-market rollout surveillance to keep a check on how your medical device is performing, to take the responsibility of how it is performing. See, even if it is performing good, that is your responsibility. That is something you can tell people about, that this is my technology and it has been performing well for you, right? But even if it goes the other ways, you need to keep that spirit high, because usually we see that one, when it goes good, it's going great, but then if it goes on the other side, then usually no one comes to claim, or no one wants to take the responsibility, no one wants to be accountable for that. Okay, so that is really an interesting point to discuss. Great.
Yes, sir. There are few other comments. Affordable, safety and profit at the same time, better reliability, working efficiency. It should be affordable and efficient. It should be safe and keeping it up to date with the new technology.
Wonderful, wonderful. The last point specifically, all the points are great, but last point specifically, I want to emphasize on, when you're talking about, improving it continuously, right? Improving it continuously is part of your product development process. So if you look at any development cycle, you will always find that there's a problem. You try to assess the problem, you find the gaps, you want to design a solution to those gaps, you want to implement those gaps, and then after you implement, you monitor for the again for the outcomes. Now here, when you want to continuously improve your product, you need to understand that the the data that you are deriving for this improvement, whether this data is coming in a proper way, whether people have been informed that such a data is being collected, right? And is it possible that is it possible for you to actually collect data by taking prior informed consent, right? So all these are very, some people might feel that these are hindrances to the development process, but you need to understand these things keep people accountable to you, and these things will be the procedures which are going to add rigor to your development process. Okay, so you can be more confident about your medical device. So if you have some real so if you have taken consent of people, if you are continuously taking feedback from them, so why do a window research, right? Do a research, like come from the front door, come on the front door and knock and tell people that, sir, you purchased our device and we are now looking to upgrade our device. What are the problems that you found in our device and how we can improve that, right? So they are not technical people who are going to guide you with the technical advancement in the technology, but they are the people, your users are the people, the customers would be the people, the patients who are using these devices would be the people who will be the right people to tell you where exactly the gap is, right? And I really agree with how the point was raised, and I'm really happy that such a discussion was there, and it could be appreciated. Any more comments, Chinmay?
Yes, sir. There's a question. Can the company be held responsible for the side effects of a particular drug or device that was not mentioned while it was rolled out in the market?
All right. So, Chinmay, this is a wonderful question, and thank you, attendee, who has posed this question. I really feel there are two parts of these answers. Okay, so now we are looking at certain side effects which were never thought of, which never came up in my trials. All right, and certain side effects which are known. So, from what I gather, the question was to say that now the company, whether the company can be held responsible for some side effects which were not mentioned, right? Which were not mentioned. Now see, here I think what is the most important way that you can counter or answer this thing is the process of triangulation. Okay, so whenever you are taking paracetamol, right? So there was a very early research that happened on paracetamol and ibuprofen. Okay, And if you look into that article, if there's time, and if organizers want, I can share that article with all of you. It is really interesting. You try to read that, okay? So there was a trial done to compare the efficacy of ibuprofen and paracetamol, okay, for control of fever. All right. Now, what was found in the study is that they are both uh, equally effective when it comes to control of fever. Whether you give paracetamol or if you give ibuprofen, both are going to bring down the fever. All right. Now, along with that, there would have been lot of other studies. So this is not the only study. If this was the study, you could have given ibuprofen and paracetamol to the patients of fever. You would have given ibuprofen to some patients. You would have given paracetamol to some patients, right? But invariably, most of the doctors are giving paracetamol to the patients of fever, right? Why that? Why we are doing that, right? So there's a lot of triangulation that happens. It is not possible that after the medical device or a drug is launched into the market and there are no other studies to understand the efficacy and effectiveness of that drug. All right. So there can be a developer who has done a lot of study and put this and launched this thing into the market, but then there would be lots of studies which will help us triangulate whether all the side effects that are mentioned by this particular company are these the only side effects, or are we looking at some side effects which are constantly happening, right? Are we saying that that there are certain, so see, like in certain vaccines, we saw that interception was one of the side effects, okay? In If I am not wrong, it was in the rotavirus vaccine, okay? But then how many people got that, right? And can we actually outweigh the benefit that we were causing by using that particular technology with the risks that were involved? So you would need a lot of more data, and see, whenever you evaluate these technologies, you need to understand there might not be a single good time to do it, okay? Sometimes if you are doing it, it might be too early to assess a medical device. You would say that we have just launched the device, we do not have very honest reviews, we are just having very few users of the device, so based on those few reviews, how can we actually evaluate? If you do it very late, then things like Pfizer can happen. So they were absolutely clueless about those side effects, but when they happened and the market informed the company that your device or your particular drug is causing such a problem in the community, they had to withdraw it, right? So it can be either way. So what is the best way? The best way would be to do constant or consistent time-based surveillance, okay? So you can after you have put in your device in the market, you do a survey, you do a post rollout surveillance. After maybe 6 months or one year, you do again a surveillance process, you again. So if you can do it real time, if you can do it on monthly basis, on daily basis, nothing like that, that is the best thing. But we also need to consider the certain limitations of us being a developing country. Second, we are also looking at all the developers would be businesses. So we cannot expect them to put in such a high amount of money for the surveillance. So they need to put a considerable amount of finances for the post-market rollout surveillance, but they cannot put everything that they have into this, right? So that is some place where you need to consider both the aspects. So there might be certain side effects which are not known to the company itself, and in such a case, the market surveillance is going to help them understand that their medical device is having certain limitations. And of course, if it is a short term, if these adverse events are happening immediately after rollout, company needs to take responsibility for such side effects, okay? So if before rollout and all my trials are saying that my medical device is safe, and after my rollout, if lots of people have been reporting me back that your medical device is not working, or maybe it has led to deaths of some people, things like that, then you as a developer needs to be accountable for that. You need to be responsible for that. So you need to take responsibility, and then you need to be accountable whether whatever has been reported is just a rumor, or you can scientifically devalidate those claims. That accountability lies on the shoulders of developers. What we usually see is that developers do not take that accountability on their shoulders, they do not take that responsibility on their shoulders. That is where the ethical problem arises. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. So there is another question. If, as a researcher, we found any discrepancy with the medical device, who do we approach to report first?
Great, great. That is really a good question and a very practical question. Okay, so from what I know and understand, if you are doing trial, okay, so usually all of your medical devices before coming out in the market will have to go through randomized controlled trials, right? This can be blinded, double blinded, whatever, but it has to go undergo clinical trials, right? And while you're doing these clinical trials, you need to get your trials. So I am talking about India, okay? So globally, I can discuss a lot of things, FDA approvals and all this, but I think context specifically, if we talk about the country of India, okay, if I talk about my country, in my country, if I'm going to do a clinical trial related to any medical device or a new drug, I need to register this trial with the CTRI. Okay, so CTRI is the central registry that is maintained by Government of India and is controlled by the DCGI. So that is the Drug Controller General of India, and everything, the progress of your trial, everything is being reported to CTRI, and the record is being kept there. All right, that is one mechanism. The second mechanism is your institutional review boards. Okay, so there are two different things. Please do not confuse your institutional ethics committee with your institution's review boards. Many institutions might not have an institution review board, in which case you might have to find a suitable IRB before you begin your trials, right? So that board is actually going to advise you on how to proceed, and the CTRI is going to help you decide whether you can continue your trial or you need to stop this trial. You understand? And after you have completed your trial, if in your post market rollout surveillance you find all these things, again the authorities that are going to help you out are going to be your medical device rules of 2020. So it has been recently amended, the medical device rules MDR 2020 amendment. I am going to discuss that in brief. So that is there, and so DCGI would be one of the primary authorities, central authorities, where you will have to communicate the issues that are coming with your medical devices. Okay, Chinmay, any other question?
Yes, sir. There's one question. Can you please tell how can undergraduate students approach for research?
Okay, wonderful. Right now, actually, a lot of focus is on undergraduate research. So, specifically, if we talk about India, there's a need and there's a dire need to involve undergraduate students in research. And if you want to get involved in research, okay, now this is a very beautiful question. And for those who do not know, you do have certain opportunities during our undergraduate times which might be which might come out to be very useful for you. So there are certain short-term studentships which are offered by ICMR, right? Many of you might have already done it, right? Now you might feel that whether we can take a project like development of a device in STS ICMR, then let me tell you that it depends on you. I mean, what sort of medical device you are looking at, right? Am I talking about some rehabilitative device which I can design in maybe which I have already designed and I just want to test it for the efficacy and those things? Can I do it in 2 months, right? Because that would be time bound, right? If not that, you can go for MUHS. So if you are in Maharashtra, you can go for your university level research grants. Okay, that is also possible. If that is not possible, uh, most of the institutions will have a provision to approach a guide and then take up a research project, which is then processed through your IC and IRBs to get you proper approvals. Okay, but if you do not have anything like that, okay, so if you say that you do not have such a system in place, in that case, still you need to affiliate to certain institutions, and only then you can carry out such a study. So if I say that I'm a freelancer, I'm a general practitioner, and now I have this some cool idea of having a medical device that is going to cure my body ache. So people have lots of issues with muscle pain, body ache, and now this particular device, if you attach it to your body, you're not going to feel any pain, right? Or this is some sort of exoskeleton that you have designed, and this is going to support the elderly during their phase of old age, right? So if I'm a freelance practitioner, if I'm a student who is no longer affiliated to the institute, I cannot independently do that research unless and until I have affiliation. So I need to approach the nearest institute, wherever the institutional ethics committee is present. There can be private institutional ethics committee which will charge you for your proposals. Okay, so there can be private institutional ethics committee where you can approach with your proposal and they will help you get the ethical clearance. These are all legal ways. I'm not talking about, illegally approaching someone and taking their name as the primary investigators just for the sake of name, and then doing publication in an entirely a different way. All those side methods we need not discuss here, because that will only promote a bad practice. What we need to discuss, there are certain private institutional ethics committees. So if you do not have an affiliation with an institute, you can approach them. So they will charge you some nominal fees and they will get your ethical clearance. Okay, so whatever said and done, you cannot proceed for any human study without an institutional ethics clearance. Okay, so that is a bottom line if you ask me. Okay,
Sure, sir.
Chinmay, for the want of time constraint, I
Uh,
think for the want of time constraint, what I'll do is, I understand there would be a lot of more questions, and
yes,
I'll
sir.
be leaving my email ID. I'll leave my email ID in the chat box. But for the want of time, I'll just go to my next slides. I understand you want me to complete it before 8, so I'll just try to cover the presentation, and I'm leaving my email ID. So. Whatever questions you have, and there are some documents to support certain regulations that we'll be talking about. I can share it with you if you send me a query on my email ID. So my email ID would be dr for doctor, so Dr. Shiv Joshi, drshivjoshi 93 @ gmail.com. Please feel free to leave an email there. I'll try to help you out as much as I can. All right. uh, I'll move to
Sure,
the
sir.
next slide. And so I was talking about three main areas where your ethics come into play when you're talking about medical devices. And that was either at the phase of research and development or at the time of use. And the third one, which was philosophical, right? And this is that philosophy that I was talking about. We called it transhumanism. All right. So transhumanism is a philosophical movement. You need to understand it is a globally existing philosophical movement, and it advocates for the transformation of the human condition. So, and that doesn't deal with a disease per se. So even a healthy human, okay, you want to transform the human as a being by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies to do what? To greatly enhance the human intellect and physiology. Okay, so see, we are not talking about curing diseases here. We are talking about perfectly healthy individuals getting this medical devices, right? Getting this medical devices for their use, for for in terms of the prosthesis, and in ways which will actually enhance their human intellect. So intellect is one such place which is which as of now is not enhanceable. We usually look at augmented reality, and there's a lot of commitment with the artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and how this is going to change and how the world is going to change around technology, we do not know. But then transhumanism says that we can or we should use this technology, the sophisticated technologies to enhance our intellect as well as physiology. We are not talking about pathology, which is very important. So when you talk about such a concept, such a level of philosophy, there's a debate at the level of philosophy itself. All right. So the questions that people pose is, aren't we humans? So will we still be humans if we are embedding all this technology in our bodies? Will we still be humans if we are using nanotechnology in our blood to cure cancer? Right? All these are look very far-fetched, but these are going to be reality sooner or later. So the fundamental question that people ask is, aren't we humans? And if we go into such a process where we are going to use medical devices for augmentation of our intellect and physiology, will we still be humans, or will be something else? All right. So or will we will be something that is transhuman, right? So there's this concept of transhumanism. There's a philosophy, and the greater concern is actually about the greater disparities that it might cause. So see, when we're talking about sophisticated technologies, can an average person afford to buy these sophisticated technologies? Can we do that? Can people attending this particular webinar right now? I can see at least 358 attendees are there. How many of us would be able to afford a very high end prosthesis for maybe augmenting our vision, maybe augmenting our strength of our hands, or maybe running faster, whatever. Okay, even if we look at the routine things, if we look at the processes that we give to the people who have amputation, right? So how many of us, of the 360 people now that I see attending this particular webinar, how many of us can actually afford such a high level or such a sophisticated technology, right? So this is going to promote a lot of disparities which are already existing in the society. Okay, so we already have a very wide gap between the rich and the poor, which is constantly increasing instead of decreasing. So are we going to promote greater health disparities, greater disparities in terms of access to these technologies, greater disparities in terms of affordability of these services and technologies and medical devices? We need to really think on this, and this is something that is debatable. There is no single answer to this, and I would like to keep this open for all of us to think here, that whether transhumanism as a movement is acceptable to us, and if it is acceptable, then what would be that common minimum principles, like would it be accessible to all, would it be affordable for all, right? All those things. So that needs to be understood. Finally, I'll just mention in brief about the regulations, and we have this three major regulations that we talk about. The standards of quality and safety of the medical devices are regulated in India by a law that is called the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940. The scope of basically the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts is restricted to only those medical devices which are notified by the government from the time, like from time to time, as drugs. So I mentioned earlier that commonly it was called as notified medical devices, which are also called drugs. All right. The medical device rules was actually brought in 2017. Okay, and it has been framed under the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts. These rules lay down the comprehensive quality requirements to be followed by the marketeers and importers and the manufacturers and the sellers of the medical devices. Now, the way the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts and the medical devices rules ensure the quality and safety of the notified medical devices at all the levels of supply chain is basically by enforcing the mandatory license requirements. All right, so this is something as a developer you need to know what would be those licensing requirements. So all the importers, manufacturers, sellers of these medical devices must obtain a license. Okay, must obtain a license from the appropriate licensing authority before you undertake any commerce using this. So before you start selling your medical devices, you would require licensing. A license is issued only after quality checks. Okay, so the license holder's business premise would be subject to periodic inspection. So from where you are manufacturing this, from where you are working on this device, and this license holder is also required to maintain detailed records of what is going on, of the sales, purchase undertaken in relation to the medical device, and ensure the traceability. So it is so many of our attendees were concerned about what we can do if the device falters after we have launched. So your documents are going to help in tracing that device. So in which batch that device was produced, was there an issue with other devices of that batch, right? So that becomes very important. Your documentation would hold a very important place when we are actually discussing what would be your role in such a case. Now there has been change. So on February 11, 2020, two major reforms came in the world of when you talk about the medical devices, and uh, these were that there was a new definition of medical devices, and there was this amendment made to the 2017 medical devices rule. And the cumulative effect of both these notifications is that all the medical devices will be now brought under the fold of quality control and safety regulations, and this is effective from April 1st of 2020. So this is very recent. I just wanted to bring it to your notice that there have been some recent changes in the rules, and I'll just put this for your understanding here. The new definition that was given after February 11, 2020, was that all your devices. So I don't want you to go through this very technical definition, but then it is important to understand that all the devices that are intended for the purposes of diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or alleviation of any disease, or the similar things for any injury or disability, investigation, replacement, or modification or support of the anatomy or of a physiological process. So this will include your processes and your external supports. So like it can be a truss that is used for hernia, things like that, supporting or sustaining life. Okay, so this can be ventilators, this can be some biological enhancement, which are working on telomeres or the stem cells, all those things, disinfection of medical devices, as well as the control of conception. All right, so contraceptive devices are also now under this new definition. And these are the two basic amendments that were made to the 2017 medical device rules. The detailed rules, if you want to know, you can just search on Google and you will find the document. But if you don't find it, leave an email to me. I'll try to give this to you, and I'll provide you it as an attachment to the email. There were two major changes to the original MDR of 2017. The first was to introduce a new chapter for registration of the newly notified medical devices by the respective manufacturers and importers, which we will discuss in the next slide. And the second was an exemption for the 37 categories, which were the medical devices notified already in the previous rule. Okay, so they provide an exemption for this. Now, this point is a bit debatable, and it is like a discussion that can be taken. That can take hours. So I think I'll keep it open for all of you to interpret. And if you have any questions, any critique about this particular amendment, then please feel free to connect with me via email. So in this rules, this is just for your quick review, a quick referral or reference. You might want to clip this slide so that you know that depending on the class of medical device that you are developing, there would be developing and you have developed, there would be different licensing authorities, and also there would be stipulated timeline for processing your applications, right? So this is very current data. This is something that I'm sharing from the latest 2020 amendment. So this is just for your reference. I'm not going to read it out for you. You can get back to it anytime you want. With that, I actually want to show you this image as a food for thought. So here we see that there are these three researchers standing at the door of Mr. Johnson, and they greet him and they say that the artificial heart study that you participated in has now closed, and we need that heart back. All right. So I just want you to take this image as a food for thought. I want you to think on it. If you have any comments regarding it, please feel free to share. And that would be it from my side regarding ethics and medical device. Thank you for your patient attendance and wonderful participation and interaction. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the enlightening presentation on the right way. We packed a lot of information into a very short time, and we appreciate having this mysterious area clarified. And that was really a great session. Learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any comments that we can take if there is time?
So, sir,
All right. Great.
So almost all of them has been covered during your session.
yes,
So
sir.
yeah, yes.
Actually, we are planning to do it post event, but it's like let it go.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. It was really great. It was really great being here for this session. And ethics is pretty close to my heart, as every one of you know. So it was a good topic that you guys selected for this session.
So it was really amazing that we have got really amazing comments. If you can go through them, and then everyone is like, yes, you at every moment and between the sessions also we were receiving the comments that yeah, the session is going really well, and that we can see that 287 students are still there listening to for your session. So yeah, that was really great. So, guys, we have sent for everyone, we have sent the link for the post event form in the chat box, and it is there in the sticky note as well. So, after we end this session, please don't forget to fill it out to be eligible for the certificates. And make sure you have to fill all the 3 days so as that you can get the certificate. So that, yes. If you have any questions, something different, you can put in the chat box.
So we are getting a very good response. Wonderful session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. And it was something different. And the thing you mentioned about is it really worth it, or like if we are doing some like innovation for a personal benefit. So even we can say that right now, during everyone is just looking on for research into for related to COVID only, research to develop a vaccine, and everyone is going into that. But this we can say that this has this was pandemic was not there, and in during this time this money and this time would have been used for something else. And so we should have like this is something for research also. We need a basic balance between what we should do and what we should not. So thank you so much, sir, for teaching that as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chinmay. Thank you, Garima. Thank you, all the attendees. Thank you.
So, guys, we have come to the end of this day.